What did you say to an annoying customer to shut them the hell up? One of my favorite stories from my brief time in customer service was when a man who called up the night after a major hurricane was screaming that his service didn't work, that he'd complained multiple times and this was the last straw. Clearly, our service sucked, and it was our fault his cable was out. He kept cutting me off and calling me rude names when I finally just interjected, "Sir, your cable isn't out because of an issue with your service. Your cable is out because a tree branch fell across the cable line." "What's that? How do I know?" "Because you live at number 78 and I live at number 75. I saw the branch fall. I'm the one who went out in the rain last night to get the branch out of the street. In fact, I know you know it's a branch because I could see you looking out your window at me moving the branch that fell on your property. Not only that, but when I was done, I went inside and called into work on my day off to arrange a bucket truck to come out and rerun the cable so you could beat the rush of calls that came in all across the island due to the storm. You didn't even have to call, a truck is already en route. And, well, that shut him up. I worked at a photo printing lab and we got people in all the time who claimed we were stupid and had messed up their pictures. One woman had us print 800 vacation pictures. They were bad quality, dark, and out of focus. When she came to pick them up, she insisted that we'd ruined them and that they were perfect in her camera and that she had a very expensive camera, so there was no way the pictures could be dark or out of focus. We finally gave her money back even though we'd done nothing wrong and we were out a lot of time and paper. She called us 30 minutes later and told us she was at a store across town, and they'd reprinted all of her pictures and they were beautiful, in focus, and nice and bright. I had to tell her that the same person who owned our store also owned the store across town, and that not only would it have taken the store several hours to reprint 800 pictures, but their printer was down that day, so they couldn't have printed anything. She hung up on me. This is a woman with too much time on her hands. If you believe the store messed up your photos, fine, delude yourself. But why do you have to flat out invent fairy tales to try and get the last word in? Get a life. My roommates and I decided to grab some Subway before we went out one Friday night. One of them is half Ecuadorian, and the Subway employees were both Hispanic. While I was in the process of ordering my sandwich, the two workers were speaking to each other in Spanish. When it was my friend's turn, he ordered in Spanish as well, which I thought was simply a gesture. I couldn't figure out why both employees looked like ghosts and stammered their way through the entire ordering process. When I got back in the car, my friend said that the two workers had been like, "Look at this pretty boy, pretending to be cultured. What a queer, he doesn't even know the language." At which point my friend decided to place his entire order in Spanish and thank them at the end of the transaction. A customer wanted to return a computer that was about a year old when I worked in retail. I asked him what was wrong. "It just don't work." I powered it on, got into Windows, connected to the wireless network, and went online. I opened Office and everything seems to be working properly. I show it to him and ask what's wrong. "It just don't work." I asked him what was actually wrong with the machine, let alone why would you return a computer a year later. "It just don't work. Are you saying that if a car don't start, it works fine?" At this point, I'd had enough of the guy. "No, sir. I'm saying that if there was a car and everyone could start it except one person, I wouldn't blame the car." Customer smoking in a supermarket, year 2000. Staff member asks customer to stop smoking. Customer refuses. Customer escalates to me, a customer service manager at the time. I grabbed a large fire extinguisher, CO2, walk up to the customer and said, "If you don't put the cigarette out now, I'll be forced to assume you're on fire and act accordingly." The customer dropped the cigarette, stamped it out with her foot, and left the store. I was working at a gas station in a very rich part of town. During a nice summer day, a prime example of the D-bag variety of the human species drove his super expensive Lamborghini in, and in that haughty, "I'm rich so you must do what I say" voice, demanded that it be filled with premium, which the attendant started to do, only the guy immediately snatched the nozzle from him and screamed that, "You're too stupid to do this on your own." We're in Oregon, by the way, where you can't pump your own gas. It's a state fire law. Well, being that he's a D-bag and an idiot, gas spills out from the nozzle all over his sparkly D-bag mobile. At this point, he truly flips out and storms into the store where I'm working as the cashier and de facto manager. He immediately demands to speak to the owner and that we're going to have to pay to have his car repainted, and he's not going to be paying for his gas. I try my best to calm the situation, but he's got a good rage going and doesn't want to be calmed down, damn it. While he's spewing forth, I notice that an officer from the local police department is about to come into the store to get snacks or a drink or some such. This gave me a nice idea. Sir, I'm afraid that the gas is in your tank and you pumped it yourself, so you're going to have to pay. Cutscene of an explosion. D-Bag then asks, so what exactly do you think you can do if I just go out and get in my car and leave? Thank you, good lord, for timing. He says this at full bellow right as the officer walks through the door. My response? Well, personally, I can't do much, but the nice West Lynn police officer standing behind you will probably arrest you for second-degree theft. The D-Bag turns around to see the officer with a very predatory smile on his face, nodding vigorously. Yeah, the guy shuts up, pays, and we never saw him again. I used to be a low-level manager in a call center. It paid the bills. Anyway, a customer had called us and been perfectly pleasant, giving us his account details, and business got underway. At the end of the call, he asked for one more thing that we couldn't do, and was informed as such. He immediately got extremely aggressive with my member of staff. At this point, her hand shot up in the air, cue me, and she handed over the headset and chair so we could view the details. I was called the B word, the C word, and various other names, and then we got down to the grand finale, the threat. I'm paraphrasing, but here's how it went. Listen, B word, I can see your company's address on your website. I'm going to come down there and F you up. At this point, I answer. So it's a good thing you gave my colleague your name and address details first then. I'll make sure to hand them over to the police somewhere in the few hours it's going to take you to drive down here. We'll be waiting. Dial tone. And of course, many of you have also drawn the same conclusion that the narrator has, that this man, who we'll charitably call a gentleman rather than a revolting sack of crap, would almost certainly have never got as personal and threatening with his language if it was a man on the phone in the first place. What a member. Not me, but my former boss. I used to work in an old family-owned gas station and garage in a small town in butt-frick nowhere. Since it was family-owned and 90% of the business came from regulars who had either business accounts or got their family's cars fixed at the shop, and had for generations on both sides. As such, the random passers-by getting gas on their way to and from cities on either side of the town made a mostly negligible amount of business. The gas station side of the business made up maybe 2% of the business, and of that, maybe 0.5% was non-regulars. So my boss couldn't give less of a crap about some of the annoying customers who came in. One day, we got a particularly annoying soccer mum. This was during the summer a few years ago, so the gas was very high compared to the rest of the year. She was convinced that our pumps were purposely calibrated incorrectly so that less gas was pumped. Her proof was that she always got X amount in gas, and it always went to a certain percentage in her tank. Well, we'd just had them recalibrated for the year and knew it was all good. She kept complaining to me about it, and being a high schooler, I didn't give a flying frick. But I kept up appearances and was polite, and I kept telling her we'd just had them calibrated. She didn't care and kept complaining. Eventually, she asked for the manager. Well, the office was right behind the counter, and my boss was in there listening the whole time. As soon as she asked for him, he simply yelled, "F off!" And that was about it. I shrugged at her, and she left. My boss was awesome with jerks like that. I used to work in a deli restaurant, and this lady comes in and rudely orders her food. I told her that everything should come out all right and that I'll double-check for her to make sure her order would be correct. She insisted on getting lots of honey mustard on her sandwich. I typed in extra honey mustard on the ticket, and sure enough, when her order comes out, there seemed to be plenty on there. But when I deliver it, she whines at me for not having the extra honey mustard I promised, and told me to fricking get a ton more honey mustard for her. I go to the back of the store, I get an entire gallon jug of honey mustard and plop it on her table. Her friends were laughing and she was steaming mad. She complained to the manager, who thought it was hilarious and actually laughed in her face. I was eating at a Taco Bell once, and I was waiting to ask for some sauce while another customer was yelling at a kitchen employee. She had pulled apart her burrito and was complaining that there wasn't enough in it. I leaned over and said, "That looks like 89 cents worth of food to me." She stormed out. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. During high school, I worked at a Burger King. I've probably told a couple of stories about it before, but I don't think I've done this one yet. There was this one woman who would always come into drive-thru during the afternoon and ask for a Whopper Jr. with extra onions. I mean, a lot of extra onions. And no matter how many we put in, she always came into the store and complained there weren't enough. Still, this was in the middle of the afternoon, so we didn't normally care. However, one day we had 4 buses full of US Army enlistees at the store at the same time. Convoys of chartered buses would go by periodically, and they usually stopped at our store because the bus drivers knew my boss. Now, these people were always the nicest, most respectful people you could possibly imagine, which was a welcome change after dealing with jerks all day. They always ordered a ton of food, all king-size, tons of double and triple Whoppers, and the whole 9 yards. My boss would always have me give them the senior discount of 15% off, and they enjoyed that immensely, because it said they were getting a senior discount on their receipts. Anyways, nice as they were, they strained our store to the limit because they ordered so much food. So we were almost literally going hammer and tongs to keep up. And then Mrs. Annoying Lady comes into drive-thru. My boss just told us to grab 2 handfuls of onions and put them on the sandwich, because she didn't need a scene when we were as far behind as we were. I could barely close the fricker because of the onions, but I managed and we gave it to her. Now remember, the store is completely full of US Army enlistees. They've probably not had fast food for weeks. I think they were going from boot camp to get their first assignments. And the line was out the door. So Nasty Lady pushes her way past all of these people, rudely shoving them out of her way, and comes up to the counter screaming that she didn't have enough onions. My boss is annoyed, so she takes the sandwich, hands it to me, and tells me to do whatever the heck I want with it. I dump the entire fricking tub of onions on this, probably about 1.5 liters of onions, and I wrap it up really, really tight and tape it shut. Note that the wrappers were somewhat elastic. My boss hands it to the lady and she opens it right on the corner to make sure we have enough, even though the package is like 6 times bigger than normal. The thing fricking exploded all over her. So awesome. All the troops were trying not to laugh. One of their officers, a quite young first lieutenant, was waiting by the counter for his food, and finally he just gave up and started laughing his butt off. The troops took this as a cue, and she had about 250 soldiers all dying laughing at her. One of the best days of my high school life. She didn't come back for a month, and she never ever complained about not having enough onions again. In short, jerk woman complains about having too few onions, and I rig her modified sandwich to explode in her face. Onion geyser for the win. She gets laughed at by more than 200 troops. The narrator is somewhat unclear on how exactly this worked, but honestly, it's always good to hear about these delusional nutbags being humbled in front of large crowds. Complaining was almost certainly just a way of getting attention, so mission accomplished, B-word. I used to work for a grocery store in high school as a cashier. One busy Saturday, an older lady came through my line with about $150 worth of groceries. Among her items was a pre-packaged piece of meat from our deli that is normally priced by weight. Her meat did not have a printed sticker on the package, and I would have needed to find a bag boy or manager to run to the deli to get it priced. Because we were super busy, I decided to wing it and set it on my scale. Looks like it's almost a pound, so let's say $2.77. Does that sound fair? I began to ring it as a miscellaneous item. "No, that doesn't sound fair," she yelled. "You need to get that priced." Groans from the line began behind her as I found a bag boy to run to get the price sticker. A manager came by to see what the commotion was about, and the lady explained the situation. I explained why I'd made the decision I made, and the manager of course stuck up for the old lady, which we laughed about later, and she accepted the apology. We then waited for what seemed like an eternity of eye contact avoidance and thumb twiddling. The bag boy came back and handed me the pork. I smirked and showed her the price. $2.78. I would have saved you a penny. The man behind her chortled. Never saw her again. I stopped to get gas today, and while talking with the cashier, I mentioned that she was probably tired of people yelling at her about the price of gas, but that since she's the one standing there, she probably gets it a lot. She said that every day someone complains to her like she can do something about it. A guy then came in and demanded, "Why the hell is gas $3.76 a gallon?" Without missing a beat, she said, "Because it went down 10 cents this morning." He just looked at her, paid, and left. I worked in electronics at Target. Over at guest service, I saw a woman with her teenage daughter heatedly speaking to the guy at the counter. After a few minutes, he pointed over at me in electronics. The woman's head whirled around, dragon-like, toward me. The rest of her body realigned with her head, and she stomped in my direction. When she reached the counter, I pleasantly asked, "How can I help you?" She slammed a receipt and a PS3 controller on the counter. "I paid $55 for this, and I can only return it for $40. I asked, "Can I see your receipt?" She nodded, and I picked it up. "See? $55. "Yeah, I see that," I said. "You bought this last week when the store gave away a $15 gift certificate with the controller." "So what? You'd shop at Target again, right?" I asked. "Not if this isn't resolved," she spat. Her daughter next to her was embarrassed. "Hypothetically, if there wasn't an issue, I'm guessing you would use the $15 gift card on your future purchase. If we let you return this controller for $55, then you would have a free $15. That is why the return price is $15 less. I can do the return for you over here if you don't want to go back to guest service." "I didn't want to return it, I just wanted to know why the return price was so much less," she said. She picked up her controller and receipt and began to walk off. Her daughter, clearly ashamed of her mother, thanked me and followed her mother out. I used to work in Best Buy services. It was sort of like Geek Squad before Geek Squad, and it dealt with everything like TVs and VCRs and junk. One day we had a guy come in and complain about his little video camera not working. I agree to take a look at it even though there's not much I can do but send it back to the manufacturer for him. It'll take some time, but that was 90% of the problem people had with services. Naturally, this guy wants a new one on the spot and he starts getting really loud about it. So I call the manager because I can't even take a leak in Best Buy without getting manager approval, and while I'm waiting for the manager to come up, I'm still tinkering with the camera in the back. I get some tools out and, hey, look, I got the thing open for the guy. A minute or so later, I come back out when the manager gets there. The manager is talking to the guy as I move a computer up to the counter. I jump in and say, "Hey, I don't think we should give this guy a new unit." The guy gives me dagger eyes and the manager is like, "Oh, why's that?" I then play the footage of what is unmistakably someone running around a pool, dropping the camera which tumbles into said pool. He'd taken out the tape, but it was recorded to the memory stick. The guy takes his camera and quietly leaves the store. It was worth 2 years of an otherwise pretty annoying job. Busted. I'm just sad that he likely took this immediately to another store, sans the memory stick. But at least he wasted his time for a bit longer. Used to work in a pawn shop. We got lots of jewelry in, and a lot of times the person bringing the jewelry would have no idea that some of their stuff was fake. 9 times out of 10, they'd get annoyed and leave their stuff with us to be thrown out. My coworker accidentally left a really gaudy but fake gold chain out on the desk one day. A customer came in, noticed the chain, and told us we'd better put it away before someone stole it. I was about to, but then I realized I could have some fun. We ended up leaving the chain on the desk and would casually watch people as they came in to do business. We caught a number of people trying to steal the chain. One guy in particular was talking us up and gradually pulling the chain off the counter. When he'd successfully pocketed it and left the store, my coworker and I began to crack up. Sure enough, about a week later the guy came back in with the chain that he stole and tried to sell it to us. When I refused to buy it, he got annoyed, but then we showed him the security cam footage of him stealing it. We weren't even angry. Someone that dumb deserves to live his life that way until he walks in front of a bus or into a wood chipper. I work in a shoe shop. One of the services we supply is to check how well school shoes fit on our younger customers. Once a staff member has signed to say they're a good fit, the customer is able to bring them back if there are any problems. This one time, a mother came back in with her son a week after being fitted with a pair, loudly mouthing off that the shoes were too tight and causing blisters. Even though she was being a psycho hose beast about it, we offered to get her a new pair. Once back in the kids department, she spotted the girl who'd fitted the original shoes and she went pants on head insane at her, demanding that the girl should be there whilst a better pair was fitted so she wouldn't make the same mistake again. Despite the mum saying some pretty degrading stuff about her, the girl agreed to sit in on the refit in an attempt to help out. She remembered the customer, even to the point of remembering the kid's name, and was visibly upset about doing a bad job. Returning to the counter, the fitter offered to put the exchange through as a final gesture of goodwill, and then froze with an awesome crap-eating grin on her face. "These aren't your son's shoes," she said to the customer. "They have a tag inside saying Tommy and your son's name is Billy." It turns out the kid had swapped his shoes with another boy in his class. We laughed that woman out of the shop. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.